We completed the selection of our Grand Councilman this morning after a long morning in the High Council, and we'll announce that tomorrow evening. I just want to begin by thanking over 30 brothers for playing to win. When we got here, we had 11 applications of people to be here and 5 by telephone, 16, and that number doubled after last night. So I hope that all of you understand how much we appreciate it as a High Council and appreciate you filling out the application to be a member of the High Council. And I want to thank Joe Francis, our region-elect, for running the process. So I just wanted to begin by saying that. I've got a great honor this morning to introduce one of the most impressive men I've ever met in my life. And I can tell you, I'm just glad I don't have to follow him speaking today. And when you hear Jerry Fields speak, you'll know why. He spoke last year, and a few of you heard him. Jerry is a Sigma Nu from Texas State University. Founded a company that he owns today and runs, and obviously has help running it. He and his wife, Linda, have been tremendous supporters of Texas State, the American Red Cross, the American Heart Association. He gives away a lot of money every year to help people that need help. He and Linda made a decision last year to give Sigma Nu the biggest gift in the history of the fraternity, $1.5 million. And I might add, this is not just a pledge, this is a check. And Jerry, I want to thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. If we could please recognize Jerry Fields for that great gift. Jerry are we going to have some slides to show Brad? Are we going to have some slides to show? Okay, I want to just, as part of his gift, let me back up just a second. For those of you that haven't been to Lexington, you just need to do it. I personally am just passionate about our shrine there. And as a member of the High Council for the last several years, it's just broken my heart to go over there and see these facilities in effect starting to deteriorate, not beyond repair, just starting to deteriorate with rot, mold. The yard needed better care, outdoor lighting, paving, some bathrooms needed repair. And so, long story short, of the $1.5 million Jerry has given, $500,000 has been allocated to the renovation of our headquarters. I'm going to show you some before and after pictures, but just wait a second. If you, on the subject of Lexington, we have our headquarters, and then we have our Center of Excellence, which is a separate building where the council meets, and there's rooms in there to stay. We have the carriage house where our staff stays that travels to see you guys. We have, a couple other houses, but it's a beautiful campus, and so we are about to embark, hopefully this year, on a campaign to not only take this beyond the $500,000 Jerry's given us, but to another level of excellence. I don't want to belabor this too much, but here again, let's go to the before. Are you just running a slideshow on this? Is that an after shot? Yeah, that's the shed. This is what the paving looked like before. Jerry was just telling me about somebody saying they don't hit that bump anymore. That's the shed before, where we keep the tractors and all this kind of stuff. Let's do the next one. This is the before of the Center of Excellence. You can see the mold and it's actually rotting. That building needed to be power washed. That's all complete now. Let's see an after picture. That's kind of you can see, maybe not the exact same angle, but they power washed all this with dry ice, and it was quite an ordeal to restore these facilities. So that's some before on the roof. We had a terrible storm come through both this year and last year. You can see the deterioration around those windows. That's all been repaired now, rot taken out. So the money we've spent so far has been to stop the bleeding, to be sure that everything had its integrity, and we'll continue to refine this and move on. But speaking of integrity, I don't know what to say, Jerry. I have to tell one quick story. When I became region-elect, I went over to Lexington. I said, you guys need new carpet, you need new lighting. you need this, you need that. I said, I don't know how I'm going to get it, but I promise you I'm going to get it. And I thought, boy, if I don't find somebody who's got money, I'm going to have to pay for this. So, Jerry, don't worry, I'm going to help you pay for it, and because I'm committed to the shrine. But ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce your brother, your leader, an amazing man that's done so much for Sigma Nu, for our country, for many people that need so much more than they have. And it's my honor, Brother Jerry Fields.
Well, good afternoon, brothers and leaders. I know you're leaders because you're elected by your peers to lead Sigma Nu. But the real question that I have is how many of you are going to be excellent leaders? How many of you are going to be okay leaders? And then how many of you are going to be terrible leaders? You know, there's a statistic out that's very worrisome to me. I'm not exactly sure how many total people are in this room, but I think it's probably close to 150, 160. And do you know that 1 out of every 87 American adults are either in prison, been to prison, or out on parole? So by that number, 2 of you are going to prison. I don't know which 2 it will be, and hopefully none of you. But I want you to think about that, because ethical behavior is what creates an environment that keeps people out of prison. Now, one of the things that changed part of my outlook in life was not too many years ago. My wife and I went to lunch downtown Houston, and on our way back to my office, I said, Linda, let's go by the federal courthouse. A fellow by the name of Ken Lay, ex-Enron guy, is on trial down there with Jeff Skilling, who I happen to know both of them. So we go in and we ask if we can go into the trial. They said, no, but there's a room here. You can watch this on television. We sat down. 5 minutes later, we're in the trial. And Mr. Skilling had already testified, and Mr. Lay is now on the stand. But what I'll always remember, and I want you to remember this, Mr. Lay was testifying, and here's what he said when he was asked the question, do you believe in rules? His answer was, rules are for little people. I don't have to follow the rules. I'm chairman of Enron. And when you get to be the position that I'm in, rules are not made for me. I looked at him and I thought, my gosh, that's an amazing statement. Well, as hard as I looked at him, his lawyers looked at him even harder. They called for a dismissal. My wife and I got up and we left the courtroom. And I immediately went back. On my way back to the office, I talked to my wife. And I said, Linda, I know that Ken Lay gave his alma mater $1 million. If he can do that, I want to give my alma mater $1.1 million of money that wasn't stolen, and I want to start a chair in ethics at our university, Texas State University. Now we hold 2 chairs, 2 professorships, and numerous other things. I have a football stadium there with my name on the side of it. But gentlemen, my life was not always like that. And I want to tell you a story about where I came from and how I got to where I am today. Now, this is almost deja vu for me, because this was almost the exact same time last year that I stood and spoke to the same group, meaning not the same people, but the commanders of Sigma Nu. I'm not saying this braggadociously, but I did fly in from Cabo off my 87-foot yacht. I have 2 homes in Mexico. I have a $6 million home in Wimberley, Texas. Charlie asked me, is that kind of a weekend place? And actually it is. But I also live in Houston. Now, when I say this to you, my wife and I have just given away $30 million over our lifetime to various causes. I did not start my life that way. And here's my story. Between entering the first grade in Rankin, Texas in 1951 to my graduation in May of 1963 from Midland High School, I attended 32 different schools. My father was known what they call as oil field trash. So if he's oil field trash, me, my sister, my brother, and my mother were white trash. Well, trust me, when you move from school to school, you check in on a Monday, sometimes you check out on a Friday, you're not one that is conducive to being chosen. You don't make friends. The parents of the kids that went to school with me looked at us as transient type people. Don't associate with this group. So going in to every school, me, my sister, my brother, we always got the worst locker, if there was a locker. We always got the worst used textbook. And we were never chosen. Now, let me assure you something. When you're a child that's 6, 7, 8, 10, 14 years old, you go into gym class. They choose 2 captains. The captain goes down the line, choosing each person to be on the team. I was always the last one standing. I was never chosen. I simply walked to the other side of the last guy that took the other side. As you move through life, you have to think, what am I going to do? How difficult is that on a 14, 13, 12-year-old child? But 1959, 1960, my parents moved to Midland, Texas, where I was enrolled in Midland High School. I was fortunate enough to get to spend my last 3 years in one school. But, again, I was not, by this time, one of those people that had developed a personality that I could be chosen. So I was standoffish. I worked. In 1962, I had a cast on my left leg, on my knee. It was about 2 weeks into high school, and I climbed up this bleacher in the gym for a pep rally. And this group of young men decided, wouldn't it be funny if we all shoved each other and see if Jerry Fields can stand up on the end? Off I go, fall about 10 or 12 feet, come down on my head, my shoulder, and my collarbone. Ended up being in the hospital for 7 weeks with a cracked skull, a broken collarbone, and a broken shoulder. Being in that hospital, laying flat on my back, in traction, with my arm out and extended, no pillow, could not get up to even take a leak. I had a lot of time to think about my life and what I was going to do with it. But lying there, the one thing that I decided I would do and could do would go to college. Now, when I say could do and would do, I want to say to you this. What would you do with your life if you knew you would not fail? Would not fail. Meaning, I can be a rock star, I can be president of the United States, I can fly the moon. Or what would you do with your life if you knew you could not fail? Meaning, could not, if you were to fail, you're going to affect the lives of all your family. You might affect the lives of the military people that you might be signed to protect. You might have all kinds of issues. Because if you cannot fail, that means that it's up to you to make sure that whatever task you take on, you have to achieve that. Now, as I sat there and I thought about that, what will I do with my life if I would not fail? Hell, I'd love to have been president of the United States. Or, man, I'd made a great rock star, particularly if I had some hair. But I decided, nope, what am I going to do with my life if I could not fail? So, after I got out of the hospital, senior year comes along. Graduation day, 1963, when all the other people in my class got their diplomas and headed to the Midland Country Club for a big celebration party, I got in a car, drove 80 miles to a drilling rig, arrived there at 11 o'clock at night, worked till 7 o'clock the next morning, did it 7 days a week, sometimes 16 hours a day doing double shifts, in order to make enough money to pay for my education. Now, my mom and my dad really didn't have aspirations for me to go to college. They thought, oh, Jerry, you're working on a drilling rig. If you work hard enough, you'll be a supervisor. About the last thing I wanted to do was be a supervisor. So I graduated. I left the oil field in September after graduation in May. I went off to Texas State, which was then Southwest Texas State Teachers College, enrolled. When I got there, my personality was pretty much the same. Didn't have any friends to speak of. All I was interested in doing is getting an education. So went through that year, made a few friends. When the school year was over, I returned to the oil fields. Made enough money to return back. But something changed when I arrived back at Texas State University. A couple of weeks into the semester, 3 or 4 guys walks up to me and said, hey, you're not in the fraternity, are you? I said, no, I'm not. They said, well, we saw you around last year, wondered why you didn't pledge. And I had a simple answer for them. I said, guys, look, I know what fraternities are. I know what you do, and it's just not what I want. I've been bullied, I've been hazed all my life, and no one is ever going to do that to me again. Well, this group of 4 or 5 guys says, well, we're actually a colony of a fraternity, national fraternity called Sigma Nu. And Sigma Nu does not believe in hazing. And trust me, if you pledge our fraternity, you will not be hazed or bullied. So sure enough, I went through Rush, and I became a member of Sigma Nu. And as I stand here before you today, I promise you this. I was never hazed. I was never bullied as a candidate of Sigma Nu fraternity. Well, right there, the day that I accepted my candidacy for Sigma Nu, my whole life changed. And I do mean literally changed. I went from being a nobody, somebody that no one would ever even invite to join their team, to somebody that somebody wanted me to be a brother, a friend. Very quickly, I was elected the junior class president of the university. Shortly thereafter, I was elected commander of the colony of Eta Tau chapter Sigma Nu. On April the 23rd, 1966, as commander, I was honored to be presented with the charter from Sigma Nu fraternity in San Marcos, Texas. It was the proudest day, I think, that I'd ever lived up until that day. Well, that was in April. I go back to the oil fields that end of May to make enough money to return from my senior year. 1 week in the oil field, an accident happens. The accident was I broke my back. They took me to the hospital. I was in a room. My mom and dad were there, and I heard the doctor tell my mother and father, I don't think he'll ever walk again. Well, you know, for a 20-year-old man, never walking again is a pretty tough assignment. But as I lay there and listened to his explanation of what my problem was, I concluded in my mind, would I walk again or could I walk again? Huge difference. My answer to myself, you will walk again. After 7 weeks in the hospital, I was released in a back brace that went from my buttocks to right below my neck. I couldn't take it off except to shower for no more than 10 minutes. I had to sleep in it. I had to walk in it. I had to eat in it. But I went back to Texas State University as commander of Eta Tau chapter. And when I got there, I made a pledge to myself. I will stay on as commander. I will lead this group of young men, and we will be successful as Adatah chapter. Well, by December, I'd concluded at the advice of the doctors that I should go to Houston and have back surgery. So I dropped out of school at the end of my first semester of my senior year. I go to Houston and I meet this doctor. And as we talk, I ask him, "Are you sure? Are you sure that you can do this?" And his answer was, "No. There is no guarantees." So I thought about this and I thought, I'm 21 years old. I don't think I'm going to take this chance. So I elected not to have surgery and went through a rehab program basically on my own. In amazement to the doctors and to me, I began to get much better. Here I am today. So now I'm one semester short of finishing my education, but I'd met a woman of my dreams, a Texas State University graduate that graduated in 1966. We'd been dating in Houston, Texas. We got married in August of 1967. I was working for a company there that I was selling dictating machines. I was pretty good at it, actually. And the guy came up to me, my boss, and he said, this was in December. My wife and I had gotten married in August. Said, "Would you like to move to San Antonio to be branch manager?" I said, "Good, yes, sure." Because I'd promised my wife, no circumstances, I had to do this. I had to finish my education. If I'd gone to the University of Houston, I had to take 30 hours. So I jumped at this chance. And January 1st, we moved from Houston to San Antonio. I enrolled at Texas State University. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturday classes, 7 a.m. And guys, believe me, 7 a.m., I had to get up at 5 a.m. every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday to drive 50 miles to San Marcos in order to make the class. Hour and a half class, then all the way back to go back to work because I had a full-time job. Summertime came around. It was every day of the week, 7 a.m. classes. Fall semester comes around, exactly the same thing. In January 1969, they hand me my diploma. I'd finished my education. One of the biggest reliefs, I think, that had ever come across my body, the feeling that I'd accomplished what I knew I could do, not knowing whether or not you would do it, because it's two greatly different things. I went to work in a different company in Houston in March of 1969. I spent 17 years with this company, rose in the ranks very, very quickly. I had a huge amount of responsibility. But in 1985, I decided that I wanted to go out on my own and start my own business. So January 25th, 1985, I resigned from the company for which I was working, asked 3 other individuals if they would like to join me competing against the company that we had been working for. They agreed. On the 28th day of January, we incorporated J.D. Fields & Company. Now I've been in this company is now over 28 years old. And in 28 years, my company has never had a month, ever, that we lost money beginning in February of 1985. Ever. And the reason is that I could not afford to lose money. It wasn't that I was afraid to lose money. I would not lose money. I set my goals by the month, by the year, by the 5 years, and by the 10 years. I had exact plans of where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, and where I wanted to be. Because the ambition that I had outweighed the negative side of what it is of having a business that's capital intensive, that takes a tremendous amount of money to carry inventory. And today my company has approximately $150 million of inventory. So you can see the progression. Well, the good fortune began to land on me and my wife as we moved along. I was elected to several nonprofit boards, Houston Museum of Natural Science being one, for which in the year 2000 I became chairman of the Board of Trustees. But then something happened. January the 24th, 2001, I was in my home in Wimberley, Texas, and I received a phone call from my assistant. And she said, "Mr. Fields, there's a disturbing note on your desk." I said, "Really? Well, if it's so disturbing, will you please read it to me?" So she did. And this is what it said. "I have fallen, and I cannot get up. Therefore, I resign your company. Craig Strawbridge, CFO." His American Express credit card was there, keys to his car, keys to the office. My immediate thought was, he's committed suicide. I'd known Craig for over 20 years. So I told Jill, my assistant, I said, begin calling around to all the hotels and motels around the area, see if a Craig Strawbridge is checked in. So she called me back and she said, we've checked with 26 different locations, there's no Craig Strawbridge. So I got in the car, I was in the car, and I drove back to my office in Houston. And on the way back, I called his wife. And her name was Susie. I said, "Susie, I need to speak to Craig." And she said, "Well, Jerry, he's not here. Is he at the office?" I said, "No, Craig's not at the office, Susie." She said, "Well, maybe he went by Equity Trucking Company. That's a company we own in addition to J.D. Fields and Company." I said, "No, Susie, he's not at Equity Trucking Company either." I said, "Do you know where he is?" She says, "No, I don't." So I get back to Houston. We're desperately trying to find Craig Strawbridge, but none of my computers would work. Everybody was sitting there, what are we going to do? I was desperate. I sent one of my employees, one of the guys that had actually came with me when he left L.B. Foster with me, and said, "Look, you go to Craig's house and you sit in front of Craig's house until he comes home and you find him." Let me back up. I left one thing out. 3 days later, that happened. His wife called me 3 days later. She had located her husband. He was 50 miles from the Mexican border in Ensenada, Texas. He was running. He had a rental car, and he was running. She convinced him to come back to Houston. That's when I sent my employee out to his house. But he wouldn't answer the door. No one would answer the door. I said, "You sit there. You sit there." 12 hours later, his wife comes out of the back of the house through the fence. I said, he calls me. He says, "She just walked out of the house." I said, "You go over. Tell her you got to see him." He goes over. She does let him in the house. He's sitting on the sofa. He jumps up and runs in the bathroom and locks himself in the bathroom. Now, all this time, I had no idea what was going on. But I called my banker, and I told my banker, "Look, I know you're out here doing an audit of my company, and I know for sure that I owe you some money. I owe you $4 million. And this guy said, "No, you don't. You owe me $15.5 million. I said, "That's an impossibility. I got my year of the end statement right here. I'm looking at it." He said, "Mr. Fields, we need to have a meeting." 5 of them came out to my office. And they said, "Where's Mr. Strawbridge?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, Mr. Fields, you owe us $15.5 million. I produced the document that I had and said, "I'm sorry, it's wrong." Well, immediately, and I do mean immediately, the bank says, "This loan officer is no longer in charge of your account. I want you to meet your new loan officer." Let me assure you guys something. You go from the carpeted floor here to the linoleum floor here. This guy is a workout guy. All he wanted was $15.5 million, and I didn't have it. So as I began to go through my books, I couldn't get into my computers. I finally hired a person that's a CFO, or was a CFO type individual, on a temporary basis. He came out, we talked. I said, look, man, I'm desperate. You got to do something here to help me out. This was in January, early February, that he came on board. And we began to try to work through this problem. Well, every day that I would come to the office, I would get a little bit more discouraged. A little bit more discouraged. And the banker every day was calling me, hounding me about this, hounding me about that. I couldn't pay my vendors. He wouldn't allow me to make payroll. Me and my two other partners at the time had to go down and take $3 million of our own money and bring it back into the company in order just to make our payroll and to pay the expenses. The trucking company that I also owned at the time, which he was involved in, I had to immediately shut that down. And unfortunately for me, my wife and my children were receiving death threats at my house. I sent my family away to Wimberley, even though it was in the school year. By April, I'd paid down the debt somewhat to the bank, but this banker was all over me, and I was sitting in my office one night about 8 o'clock, and I was just about to give up. I actually put my head down into my hands. I was almost in tears because I did not know what I was going to do. And the CFO walks into my office, 8 o'clock at night. He looks at me. He said, Jerry, are you okay? I said, no, Steve, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. He said, well, what's the problem? I said, Steve, I just don't think I can do this. I just do not think I'm going to make it. And he didn't know me at all, but he looks at me and he said, Jerry, he says, you know, right now, I and your employees have more faith in you than you have in yourself. He turned around and walked off. So I sat there a few minutes and I thought, you know, about my life. And I reached into my wallet and I pulled out this little white card. This little white card has been with me now for about 46 years. On the front of it, it says Sigma Nu Fraternity, Jerry Dean Fields, Adetol number 4, as of April the 23rd, 1966. And I turned it over and I read this creed. I read this creed several times. And I thought to myself, Jerry, what would you do with your life if you know you could not fail? Dude, gut it up here. Well, let me tell you, I got up out of the desk, picked up the phone, and I called the banker. 8 o'clock at night, he was there. I said, let me give you a piece of advice. Either let me run this company the way I have to run it and the way I've run it for the past 15 years, or tomorrow morning you can come out, the keys will be in the door, you can run it yourself. I said, but do not call me and bother me again. I will pay you back. I'm a man of honor. I'm a man of my word. June the 17th, I invited he and his lawyer out to my office. They came out, and they were so happy. I'd paid them off the $15.5 million. I didn't owe them any money. They had a brand new loan agreement ready for me to sign. I sat down and looked at it, and I said, gentlemen, surely you don't think I'm going to sign this loan agreement with you. I said, our relationship is now ended, so please exit my office. They were shocked. Why were they shocked? I'm not sure. Other than the fact they felt that they had saved my company when they had done nothing but make a problem for me. Now, when you look at this and you think about whether you can live your life the way you need to in an ethical way, that you pay the obligations that you owe, that you repay the money for which you borrow, you do the right things that you're supposed to do in life, and then you take your life for whatever success that you've managed to do and to get to in your life, you begin to give things back. You begin to look at other people and finding those needs for which people need money, they need help, they need leadership. And my wife and I have spent, as Charlie said, a good number of hours, a good number of dollars in order to support different ethical causes. And every month, I think back about that conversation my wife and I had when we went down and heard Ken Lay say, rules are for little people. People like me, we do not have to follow the rules. Well, let me tell you guys, this is sort of deja vu, as I said. I flew in from Cabo to Houston day before yesterday. But one of the things I want to share with you is this. A year ago, I was there right off my yacht. There's a Swim with the Dolphins event there, and there was a man and two little girls standing there, and the little girls had this awful looking expression on their face. So I struck up a conversation with this man, and I said, where are you from? I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. I said, what did you do? Come to let your daughter swim with the dolphins? He said, yes, we did. We got off the Disney cruise ship in Cabo, and we came 17 miles out here, and they won't take my credit card. They pointed me to an ATM machine, and I tried it, and it doesn't work. I said, so your daughters aren't going to get to swim with the dolphins? And I could tell by looking at their faces, I already knew the answer. He said, no, they let us feed the dolphins just because of our expense out here, but they're not going to get to do it. I said, well, how much does it cost? He says, it's $200. So I reached in my pocket, and I pulled out two $100 bills, and I handed it to this man. I said, let your daughter swim with the dolphins. He said, you don't even know me. I said, it doesn't matter. He said, well, give me a business card and I'll send you the money. So I gave him one of my business cards, and I was gone 3 months. When I get back to my Houston office, there's an envelope. Inside the envelope's a check for $200. Has his return address on it. I void out his check. I put a note on it. Send it back to him. And I say, give each one of your daughters $100 and ask them if they will give this to something that they believe in to help someone else. I want to teach them what I learned, and that's how to give back. Well, I got a note from the guy, and it said, I'm following your instructions. I'm giving each one of my daughters a $100 bill. Several weeks go by, and I get two cards. The first one is from the youngest one. You can hardly read her writing. I don't know how she's old, maybe 6, 7 years old. Dear Mr. Fields, with $100, I bought 10 fruit trees for people who need food, an education for someone who hasn't gone to school, and I spent $5 on helping someone get a donkey to carry things with. I used World Vision. Thanks. From Mary. The second one, which was a little older girl, she writes me the same type of note. Mr. Fields, thank you again for letting us do the dolphins. It was a wonderful experience. With my $100, I donated things to people in Africa and other poor places through an organization called World Vision. I gave 2 soccer balls, enough mosquito nets for one family, hope for a sexually exploited girl, 1 rabbit, and a share of a donkey. Even though I went $10 over, I know that I helped people tremendously. Thank you for the valuable lesson you taught me. Now, gentlemen, as I conclude, I want to say to you that I hope that you have learned one valuable lesson. That is, be a leader. Take responsibility. Know when to say yes. Know when to say no. Good leaders don't always say yes. Good leaders say no as many times, if not more, than they say yes. You'll never be the most popular guy in the fraternity. You're not there to be their best friends. You're there to be their leader. Leaders lead. Leaders lead. Ethical leaders are what you're here today to be about. And for that, gentlemen, I thank you.
Jerry, thank you. We love you.
Love you too.
Another round of applause, guys. Come on. As I said before, I'm just glad I don't have to follow that. Guys, make a couple of quick announcements, and one of them is quite appropriate with Jerry being here. The High Council voted yesterday to issue 2 new charters. I'm happy to announce one of them is at the University of Houston, Jerry, right in your backyard. So that's great. The other one is Appalachian State. So gentlemen from Appalachian State, stand up, be recognized. Let's go. One of my favorite little thoughts is I love catching people being good. There's no future in catching people being bad. And when we get the opportunity to recolonize and recharter, it's just so fulfilling for all of us. And we have 4 others in the queue for the next 12 months, either be recolonized or rechartered, which I won't mention at this time, even though, because I'm not sure I can. But anyway, guys, let's play to win. Let's work hard this afternoon. Brad, do we have any other announcements? I think we're good. You know what time dinner is, which is 6 o'clock. We have another great keynote speaker tonight in the Sigma Nu Man of the Year, Wells Ellenberg. No pressure, Wells. So let's get back to work and have a great afternoon. Thanks again, everybody.